Is it just me, or does it feel like the Dodgers are on the verge of breaking baseball? They just signed another superstar to a massive contract, and they're probably not done spending. How in the world are they doing this? What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Wednesday evening, November 27th, 2024, as I record here the night before Thanksgiving. I want to talk a little bit about the Dodgers news and the significant Major League Baseball news that came out earlier on Tuesday. I believe it was Tuesday night when Blake Snell set the baseball world ablaze with his Instagram post of him in a Dodgers uniform. And at first, everybody was wondering, is he trolling? Everybody knows he's a pretty online guy and does the video game streaming and all that kind of stuff. So wouldn't put it past Blake Snell to be trolling baseball fans with a post like that. Marquee free agent, of course. He's not really going to the Dodgers, is he? Yeah, he's just posting. Well, it didn't take long before the big-time baseball reporters around the country got wind of the news and confirmed it. Blake Snell to the Dodgers is happening, and it shook up the baseball world on Tuesday night because, of course, the Dodgers already have so many superstars. They won the dadgum World Series this past October. That just happened. And that magical season comes on the heels for Los Angeles of bringing in Shohei Ohtani. He wins the MVP award during a year that he doesn't even pitch. Of course, that's half of the guy's value. And he wins the MVP basically with one hand tied behind his back. So he's going to come back next year in their starting rotation, making them already better than they just were when they won the World Championship. And now they go out and get Blake Snell, who was awarded his Cy Young just 12 months ago. And it seems as though the Dodgers are probably far from being finished. There have been rumors about, hey, would they be in on Juan Soto? I don't know if maybe the deal for Snell was a different allocation of those resources, and they're out of the Soto race now. We'll see. Could they make a trade for guy like Nolan Arenado? Obviously, Arenado recently saying, I'll play first base. I shouldn't say saying. I should say that it was reported that Arenado would be willing to change positions to facilitate a potential trade to a contender from the Cardinals this offseason. So what's to keep the Dodgers from potentially going out and making a move like that? The sky's the limit. Roki Sasaki, that's another name, got to come over from Japan, and his situation is unique because of his age. He's not at the age where those players that come over from the Nippon Professional Baseball League, a la Shohei Ohtani a number of years ago, he's not old enough to get just a blank check. He can't sign for any amount of money that an MLB team would want to sign him for. It is going to be subject to the international spending budgets, which basically means, well, you can't overwhelm him with cash if you're another team to basically pry him away from the Dodgers where it feels inevitable that he'll go. Now, I guess the question would be, is there going to be room in the rotation for Roki Sasaki? But I feel like that's the kind of problem that the Dodgers will figure out when they get around to it. They'll cross the bridge when they come to it, as they say, because look, I mean, this past July, they were scouring the market trying to fill out a rotation because of all the injuries that the Dodgers had. Jack Flaherty is probably punching air last night that he doesn't end up getting the contract offer from the Dodgers. Blake Snell does, which, I don't know actually how Flaherty feels about that. But, man, it seems like he fitted nicely. He's a Los Angeles kid, so would have probably loved to stay. I don't know that this means he won't. But you start looking at the depth chart. Okay, Blake Snell's in there. Ohtani's going to be pitching next year. Yoshi Yamamoto is the big offseason acquisition a year ago for their rotation. They signed Yamamoto and Ohtani, but Yamamoto was the only one of the two that was pitching. Next year, Ohtani will presumably be able to pitch. Tyler Glass now, they traded for him. I mean, they've got Tony Gonsolin. They've still got Dustin May. If he's healthy, what are you going to do with all those guys? And then you get into the prospects like Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone. The list goes on. Landon Knack. I mean, this is unbelievable what the Dodgers have potentially. And I know I'm kind of counting my chickens on the Roki Sasaki thing, but I think if you're Sasaki and it's not as though another team could go out and just say, hey, we're going to win you over with money, why wouldn't you want to play on a team that already has guys like Ohtani and Yamamoto from your home country? I think that would probably be a pretty strong selling point. Oh, and by the way, you're almost guaranteed to win the World Series a couple times over the next handful of years if you do sign with the Dodgers. So everything is coming up Dodgers, but how are they doing this? It's so crazy that you can sort of anticipate the way the narrative on these deals is going to go. Every time they do another one, and I was all over it last night, and it only took like 2 minutes after my kind of tongue-in-cheek but kind of not tweet where I retweeted Passon, who had said that left-hander Blake Snell and the Dodgers are in agreement on a 5-year, $182 million contract pending a physical. I said, well, I'm waiting on the report that $178.5 million of that 182 is deferred until we colonize Mars. Like, it seems like every single time for the Dodgers, the way they're doing this is the deferred money. It's like the unlimited money glitch. If you ever played the Sims computer game, it's the Rosebud hack. It's the Konami code. I mean, they are absolutely exploiting the system to their benefit. Now, I think we have to be a little bit specific in understanding what exactly the Dodgers are doing and how they're doing it. I thought there was an article by CBSSports.com, Matt Snyder, that did a good job of breaking down the finances a little bit. And he references reporting from the New York Post, who had that Snell would get a $52 million signing bonus along with $13 million per season in deferrals over the 5-year contract. So the total deal is 5 years, $182 million. And the question is like, all right, we get it. There's no salary cap in baseball, but there is the collective bargaining tax, and you go over that luxury tax threshold, which the Dodgers obviously have no problem doing. Like, eventually you're just spending more money per dollar for the right to spend that additional dollar. It just continues to compound upon itself. The Dodgers do not seem to mind. They continue to do it. And does that beg the question of whether it's really very much of an impediment to have the collective bargaining tax where it is? A lot of people would say, well, I mean, it's good for the players because at least there's one team out here that's willing to pay these players a big-time market value deal and sort of be the team to set the market. It would be bad for players, and the union would not be in favor of folks going, well, you gotta shut this down. The Dodgers are spending too much money. The union would say, we want everybody else to spend with the Dodgers. Spend. Our players are worth it. So I don't generally think it's bad for baseball that Blake Snell is getting 5 years, $182 million. Frankly, he should have gotten that type of deal last offseason after he was the Cy Young. And it was very strange that his market did not necessarily respond in the way that you might anticipate it would coming off of a Cy Young season. I think a lot of folks were worried about the durability of Blake Snell and wanted to see, I guess, another year of him. And he had some injuries, but started 20 games for the Giants when they signed him on that one-year deal. I think there was the opt-out that he was able to use only through 104 innings. So, maybe to some extent the concerns were not totally unfounded. He's going to be 32 years old next year. We'll see how much of a workload he ends up with for the Dodgers. But the Dodgers don't even care. They shouldn't care because they're set up so darn well. First of all, okay, how are the Dodgers doing this? That's the primary question of this video. Well, their ownership is willing to spend. That's number one. They've got deep pockets. The Dodgers are owned by a consortium, as I'm reading it here from Google, known as Guggenheim Baseball Management. And when you look at some of the investors that are involved in this thing, you've got Magic Johnson. You've got a movie producer, Peter Guber. You've got Billie Jean King. You've got the list goes on. Those are the biggest names that I know as far as like celebrity. But you've got a ton of folks that are in this ownership group, and they're all after the same thing. They're like, let's get really good, and let's spend a lot of our money to be really good and stay really good. Mark Walter is the controlling partner and the chairman, kind of like Bill DeWitt is that for the Cardinals. But they've got a bunch of other folks with deep pockets as well that are getting involved in this thing. And so that's number one. Number two, I mentioned the CBS Sports article of how they're doing it. Let's talk about this. $52 million signing bonus. So using the signing bonus, which is a check that Snell gets cut that check and he's got that money in the bank tomorrow, is from what I understand. It's a signing bonus. Like, if you're a team, and the NFL has done this for years, and I've always been like, they're all circumventing the cap. How is this allowed? Well, it just is. If you've got the $52 million to give the guy, and you're willing to cut the check right then and there, then you get to do it. And what that means is Blake Snell is getting the cash. It's on hand. It exists. It's tangible. He gets it deposited into his accounts, $52 million. because it's $52 million, you divide it by 5, which is the number of years on the contract. So if I'm understanding this correctly, $10.4 million per year. Now you're talking about what goes toward the competitive balance tax. And if you had just said 5 years, $180 million, or 182, I think it was, that ends up being like $36.4 million per year. Now, the Dodgers aren't saving infinitely on this, but remember, once they're over that tax threshold, every additional dollar spent now has a surcharge attached to it if you're the Dodgers. In the first year of a team being over that threshold, which for 2024 was $237 million, it's 20% additional fee essentially paid on however much you go over by. And then if you are over that number for a second year in a row, it's a 30% surcharge. And I think the Dodgers were like well over $300 million this past year. So they do it again. All right, now it's for talking like an extra $100 million essentially. And that's rough numbers. I don't know exactly what the Dodgers are going to do with their payroll, but let's just pretend. For that $100 million, you're basically spending $30 million additional dollars. It's going to cost you $130 million to spend $100 million higher than that 237 number as a team. And then if you're 3 or more consecutive years above the threshold, it's 50% on the overages. So if you're over, let's say if you go over for a third year in a row, and I think the Dodgers got underneath it before they started this whole Ohtani thing, because the 2023, if I'm not mistaken, was when they were kind of aware of it, and it was like, they're going to reset the threshold so that they're able to get it rolling. I guess that's not true. I'm looking this up right now. I thought they were trying to get beneath it, which is why they weren't spending as much in 2023, but they did. They paid $19.4 million in competitive balance tax because they were above it. So I guess that means this is going to be in that range where the Dodgers are 3 or more years. It's always going to be a 50% surcharge on the overages. So which last year equated to, and I think they might have not quite yet been in the 50% range. That'll be applicable this time, if I'm reading all this right. 2022, they did it. 2023, they did it. 24. No, so I mean, that would have been, but it was $19.4 million is ultimately what I'm reading here that they owed. And if these numbers are wrong, somebody correct me, because I'm just Googling. I'm trusting what pops up on Google. That's always a dangerous game. But there's so many numbers that I'm going to throw at you that I wanted to just try to be brief with it, and give you a general idea, if nothing else. But the overages are going to be substantial, but not quite as substantial because of the way the Dodgers can do their arithmetic. So let's get back to the Snell situation. The signing bonus, $52 million. He gets that money up front. Any team could do this, in theory, but they have the cash on hand with that ownership group. That's what's unique. There would be some ownership groups that would say, we do not have the liquid cash on hand to be able to do that. We don't have the $52 million just sitting out there to be able to facilitate something like that liquid, to just be able to put it into Blake Snell's bank account. Why is it beneficial? Well, Blake Snell is now going to be willing to do these deferrals on his contract, which is where the actual CBT savings come in. Why would he be willing to defer some of his money? The time value of money, anybody that's taken an econ course understands that. Well, yeah, he just got some time value out of $52 million that they put into his bank account. So if his average annual value on that $182 million is $36.4 million, and he's getting 52, I mean, he's getting a year and a half up front. So if you've got that cash, you're probably going to be willing to then say, okay, I'll do the deferrals that you want me to do, because you basically just paid me a year and a half yesterday. So we're good. Maybe not yesterday, but you get what I'm saying. The signing bonus that's going to happen for Blake Snell. That's the beauty of it. And so now it's like, well, why would these players take deferrals? Well, they're also getting a signing bonus. The signing bonus does technically count, but they spread it across those 5 years, and that's how you're coming up with the total that's going to count against the CBT threshold. So $10.4 million per year. That's 52 divided by 5. And then the deferrals are now $13 million per year. They're doing $13 million, or Snell is willing to defer $13 million per year over the 5 years. So that's a significant chunk that you're taking away from what he's going to be paid annually, but also the way that gets figured, the deferrals, into the luxury tax. Because by spreading that out over additional years, the per year basis of what that base salary that remains is going to be paid is going to be lesser. And that's how they end up getting around it. It's not substantial. I think the total ends up being like $32 million and change instead of $36 million and change. So about $4 million per year that they're saving on the luxury tax threshold on this contract. And this is how signing bonuses work, if I'm not mistaken, in all the sports. And again, anybody that has a bigger, better background in this, let me know. I'm just kind of making sure I'm talking my way through this on the fly. But I think that's the way it works. The deferrals, there's interest payments and aspects that are added into that, but you, by deferring that salary, end up not having to pay as much on the AAV of what the contract is considered to be. Again, because of the time value of money, and it spreads it out, and it does that math for you. So, as much as I'm probably not making a ton of sense, the long and short of it is, they're able to shave, for now anyway. Like, the problem is eventually this has to come home to roost, but I figure it won't. Just like the NFL teams that they say are, they're in salary cap hell. They're not going to be able to get out of this. And then they do. It's like the cap's not real. Well, the money's not real in baseball either. And I think the Dodgers have figured this out. Maybe someday there's an issue with it, and their payroll is just so ridiculous that I don't know what they'll do. I have a feeling they're going to get out of it, though. I just have a feeling that the Dodgers, either the rules will change around it or something's going to give to where when it does all come home to roost at the same time, which I'm sure that they're doing this effectively to where it doesn't all pile up at the exact and have to come through at the exact same moment. But I just figure that the Dodgers will end up being okay. That's just the way it feels. Doesn't it feel that way? Because they seem pretty confident in the way that they're going about it. But anyway, you're talking about instead of $36.4 million, $32.4 or 3 or whatever it is, million per year on the AAV. But remember, if the Dodgers are paying an additional 50% on the surcharge on everything that goes above the CBT, which they're already above it, you figure, then that $4 million per year is actually relatively substantial. It's now $6 million per year. So they're basically, from an accounting standpoint, as it pertains to the rules of Major League Baseball, they are making $6 million per year just sort of disappear, that they will not have to pay as a result of the way that they are doing this. Now, down the road, the physical money still goes to Blake Snell. But this is circumventing the cap, which doesn't exist. It's the CBT, the competitive balance tax, the luxury tax. And they're doing it over and over, but it's by having a signing bonus up front. The player goes, you can defer some of that money. That's fine. You just gave me a bunch of money. I'm cool with it. And it ends up working out really, really well. And then they can keep doing it over and over again, because each time they do it, it's like, well, we're already going on paying the surcharge, but we can continue to find ways to make the surcharge be less as we continue to go over the CBT every year. It's genius. And the reason it works is because they have the money, like the liquid cash on hand through that ownership group, and because they're willing to spend it to win. And they're probably not done. It's incredibly deflating if you are a fan of another team, especially in the National League, because your ticket to the World Series, it goes through Los Angeles. You have to beat the Dodgers. Somebody's going to have to do it every single year, because they wake up, they roll out of bed in February, and they're a playoff team. Maybe they want to win the division every year. The Padres are pretty good. There will be some other good teams out west, but they're a playoff team every single year. They roll out of bed February 1st or whatever day they have their pitchers and catchers report, February 8th, whatever it is, and they're a playoff team. And man, when you look at that roster, it's going to be a tough one to beat, even in the playoffs, even with injuries. Like they just showed it last year that it can happen that way. So are the Dodgers breaking baseball? It kind of feels like it, but at the same time, there are other ownership groups that have money that if they wanted to spend like this, they could. But it does kind of set up a scenario where, and again, I'm not in favor of even the lower end MLB owners being able to cry poor about how they don't have enough money to be able to contend or field a team or whatever, to field a competitive team. I'm not in favor of that. But with how we know these ownership groups are operating, if there's a handful, if there's 4, 6, 7, whatever it is, that are willing to go to this extent, which maybe there's really only one, that's the Dodgers. But there are others, like we know Steve Cohen with the Mets. He goes pretty hard in the paint as well. So if there's just a few, kind of all the best players are going to end up on those teams, right? That's sort of the game that has to be played. The disparity has never been more clear, right? But it's sometimes a disparity caused by a lack of ownership groups willing to spend the money that could be spent. Like, I'm not in favor of just letting the Pirates off the hook and letting the Athletics, letting John Fisher off the hook. Like, I think those organizations should be doing more rather than trying to pinch and skimp and save as much as they possibly can and then still collect the revenues and the TV money through MLB and all that. Like, I don't agree with that. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say this is bad for baseball that the Dodgers are spending because, I mean, the game grows, players make more money. That's the evolution of time, and that's a sign that your league is in good shape when player salaries are in good shape. But you can make a case that this competitive balance tax situation is one that the Dodgers seem to have resolved. They seem to be pretty comfortable with where that thing's sitting and how they're handling it over the course of time. Let me know your thoughts on this, baseball fans, Cardinals fans. This channel is typically featuring a lot of Cardinals videos, but this is a baseball conversation, and it is interesting. How do fan bases feel about where the Dodgers are at? How do Dodgers fans feel? Let me know how you feel. If you're a Dodgers fan, yeah, you probably love it. But do you see that this is turning into it's almost kind of making a mockery? We don't normally think about a 162-game season coming down to stuff that happens in November. It shouldn't really be that way. And even last year when Ohtani signed, we all said it. We all said, oh, there it goes. There goes the season. Dodgers win. But they still had to play it, right? They still had to go out there and do it. But it really did. It felt that way then, and it kind of does feel that way now a little bit. Let me know what your thoughts are. And if you like this kind of conversation, if you like baseball videos, and you don't mind being inundated with Cardinals videos mostly, we'll talk a lot of Major League Baseball, especially in the offseason when there's a lot going on. Hit subscribe on this channel and make sure you're locked in for the full MLB offseason. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.